So recording is start
ठीक
now.
ठीक है cool. मैं उम्मीद करता हूं कि ये पीपीटी दिख रही होगी आप लोगों को।
Yes, sir.
तो टॉपिक जो है बहुत ही अच्छा रखा गया है। ये जूरिस्प्रूडेंशियल नेचर का है और इवॉल्विंग टॉपिक है। तो रीडिंग ऑफ डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल्स एंड फंडामेंटल ड्यूटीज इनटू फंडामेंटल राइट्स। नाउ these are the three, they are various pillars of our constitution, and these are three pillars. There are other pillars also. Central state relations are other pillars. This is something like a huge building which stays on various pillars. But certain pillars are far more important. Certain pillars are central pillars. So while fundamental rights, right is a central pillar for any democracy, and that's why we find provisions of fundamental rights in many constitutions, including USA. We may not find the provisions of directive principles in USA or maybe other places. We may not find fundamental duty in USA. Of course, it is found in other constitution. But then it indicates that fundamental right is the central pillar. Central pillar in the sense that if that pillar is not there, then democracy is just a sham. Democracy is a type of meaningless thing. Democracy is not actual democracy in a true sense, in modern sense. We have various types of democracy. Take example of our neighboring countries, China. China is a communist democracy. Why democracy? Because there are elections. Are they democracy in true sense? No. Why? Because fundamental rights, the central pillar of democracy, is not recognized in the fashion as it should be. Like maybe how does UN Charter says? What are the remedies available? Is it really a restriction, a limitation on state? And the answer is no. I've gone through China's constitution when we were discussing, we were working on our bail book. I tried to find provisions of liberty, and there is general law also. What to talk about constitution, but general law of bail also. And I found that there are very weak provisions. So that is a democracy, China, but the central pillar is a weak pillar there. Take example of maybe a neighboring country like Pakistan, to some extent Bangladesh, where religion dominates. Not just religion dominates. Religion, there is nothing bad in religion. What is bad is the extreme form of arbitrary interpretation. So they interpret their religious epics, their religious provisions in an extreme manner, which was once made maybe 1500 years ago, 1400 years ago, under certain circumstances. But they do not suit now. But they still stick to that. So while fundamental rights are recognized, the central pillar is recognized, the way it is recognized in our constitution, but that is subject to those religious directions. Our fundamental rights, which is central pillar, is not subject to religious directions. And we all know that even sometimes the religious directions, customary directions, which look like religious directions, they have been declared unconstitutional. They have been removed. They have been disowned and criticized so many times. Take example of dowry, which has a customary means origin, and but we have disowned it. Still, it is in practice, but we do not. We are not proud of that. Recent example can be Shara Bano. Please take note. I'm not talking about Shah Bano case, Shaira Bano case, 2018. One of the custom of instant triple talaq has been declared unconstitutional because it violated fundamental right. But please take note, because you are PhD students. Please take note. Custom was not declared unconstitutional. It was a provision of 1939 Act that was declared unconstitutional. So our customs, take example of customs like maybe sometimes people say that two persons, male and female from same village, they cannot marry. This has a maybe customary value. Sometimes people may say एक ही गोत्र में है, maybe religious value. So society may try to follow, but the constitution does not follow. Constitution says that they have right to marry. They want to marry, they are not violating laws. Even if at the cost of unpleasure of the society, the whole village, the whole community goes against them, constitution stands by them. That is why our fundamental rights central pillar is different from Pakistan, maybe Bangladesh also. I'm not talking about Sri Lanka or Myanmar. In those places, the constitution has been trampled so many times. We had only one unfortunate exception of emergency. Otherwise, more or less, our constitution and fundamental rights remain intact. Take example of UK. 200 years, 300 years, UK existence sounds long, but technical existence is last maybe 200-300 years, maybe. They are not in a position to decide should there be a fundamental right, should there be a constitution or not. In the constitutional movement, when people are moving to constitution, UK do not have a constitution, do not have a recognized fundamental rights in the fundamental law. That does not mean they don't have. They have 1998 Human Rights Act, but then they are as good as the statutory law. They are not fundamental. They are statutory, less fundamental. They relied more on the parliament, not on the constitution. Our founding fathers did not rely on the parliament. They knew that the parliament, the parliamentarians, they keep on changing. And because they are human beings, so they may come under various pulls and pressures. And those pulls and pressures can be political, those pulls and pressures can be religious, those pulls and pressures can be vote oriented, those pulls and pressures can be social, those pulls and pressures can be moral, those pulls and pressures can be financial. So therefore, they did not rely on the parliament like UK. They had experience of UK parliament also. They relied on a fundamental document that is known as constitution. So therefore, fundamental right is a central pillar for every democracy. Indeed, in 2012, UK has thought of a fundamental right document. There was a proposal, it was discussed, but then they declined that proposal. They have some worries. But I think that maybe in next maybe 20 years, 30 years, they will move to that, because that is one of the best way available. Of course, it has certain limitations, certain restrictions, like fundamental rights are being misused by many people. You will find that even terrorists misuse it, criminals misuse it. That's why people, it seems that the UK is little worried. But we should be proud of that we have passed 70 years with this central pillar of fundamental rights. Second is directive principles. The active principles of the state policy. I will just introduce something and then I will change the PPT. The active principles we all know, they are type of directive. In the very essence, they are of moral significance. They are directive. They are not essential mandatory directions. They do write principles, but they are not principles in the fundamental right sense. Fundamental right is the principles of liberty, principles of equality. Fundamental rights contains principles of equality, principles of liberty, Article 90, 19 to 21A, principles of freedom, principles regarding religious freedom, that is 25 to 28, rights regarding our language, and special rights for minorities, 29 to 30. Principles are being recognized. Where are these principles mentioned? These principles are mentioned in our preamble. But then these principles are directive in nature and more policy oriented. And therefore, the word is directive principles of the state policy. So, fundamental rights are also principles, but they have a far more greater significance than the policy. Why? Because these principles are mandatory in nature, and we can go and we can enforce it. In this sense, they are far more superior in this sense, not in all senses. So they can be enforced. They has to be enforced. There is no if and but in enforcement of fundamental rights. Even the government or the state cannot say we don't have money, we don't have maybe police force. Uh, so they cannot do this. While in directive principles, they are not enforceable in a court of law. Understand? And we all know it. They are policies, therefore they are not mandatory in nature. So here comes the difference between principle and policy. And therefore I often say that law can be understood by P5. What is this P5? First is the principles of law. Principles of presumption of constitutionality is a principle. In criminal law, we can say presumption of innocence is a principle. In constitutional law, again, rule of law is a principle, liberty is a principle, equality is a principle. In context of evidence, burden of proof beyond reasonable doubt is a principle. So there are various principles, they are mandatory in nature. They may not be written anywhere. Presumption of constitutionality is not mentioned anywhere, but every court starts with that. Presumption of innocence is not written anywhere under criminal law for the purpose of criminal trial, but every court is bound to start with that. They cannot compromise. They cannot say, नहीं नहीं, हम presumption of innocence को नहीं मानते. Someone can argue, भाई आप क्यों मानते हैं, क्यों presumption of innocence शुरू करते हैं? कहाँ लिखा है? Certainly it is not written. So principles of law, that is P1, are not written, not mentioned, but they are basics for every legal system which believes in democracy and rule of law. So they are P1, they are mandatory in nature, principles, they are not written. Of course, the process of writing has started. For example, if you see international ICC rules, statute of ICC, International Criminal Court, Rome Statute 2002, You will be surprised to find that many principles have been given a statutory recognition there. Presumption of innocence, burden of proof, even you will be surprised to find intention and knowledge has been defined in that. So difference between fundamental right and right to principle lies here that right to principle is a policy and fundamental right is a principle which is mandatory in nature. So P1 is principle. P2 is provision of law that we know all know. Article 1, Article 32 type that. P3 is policy that I have already discussed with you. And difference between policy and principle, I told you that policy is discretionary, principle is mandatory. P4 is precedent, judicial opinion. And this precedent is fundamental, central to our discussion today. Why? Because directive principles and fundamental duties are read into fundamental rights through precedents, through judicial decisions. This is P4. And P5 is professional opinion, law commission opinion, Upendra Bakshi's opinion, P.K. Tripathi sir opinion, Dicey, Dias, Professor Veer, Smith Hogan. So these are professional opinion. So this is about P5. Let us keep in mind this P5. Professional opinion is significant for our discussion also today because precedents are shaped by professional opinion. Judiciary is influenced by professional opinion. There are many times they have referred, they have quoted Law Commission of India. They have many times quoted other experts and read into fundamental duty, read fundamental duty and fundamental directive principles in the fundamental rights. Finally, last is fundamental right, fundamental duty. That is a later incorporation. It was not initially in the constitution that we all know. Later on incorporated in 1976. Probably the purpose was to make Indian people more duty oriented. This can be one such purpose. That, but in the background, it came in. It is also argued that it was one way to tame Indian citizens because the Prime Minister Indira Gandhi ji, she was becoming despotic, using the laws, misusing the laws for her own political gains. We know 39th Amendment was brought in where she declared herself immune from her election, immune from even judicial review, and declared her election as the election was right, will remain right. So it is said that fundamental duty provision was indeed incorporated uh, to further discipline Indian citizens in a particular political direction. But anyway, there is silver lining, and let us take it positively. The fundamental duty has indeed was required there. Indeed, fundamental duties or duty is very close to India. India believes in duty jurisprudence. It does not believe in rights jurisprudence. It believes in that once you fulfill your duty, I fulfill my duty, then rights are not required to be enforced. So enforcement mechanism is not required if duties are being done by everyone. And everyone means everyone includes the king also. Everyone includes mantri also, ministers. Everyone includes powerful persons also. And duty, the concept of duty was closer to dharma. And it was said that even the king is under dharma. He is bound by dharma. And in one place it is said, in many places it is said that it is the duty of the king to take care of its people. And the provisions which are there in many of our ancient documents, they go to the extent that if the king does not perform his dharma of taking care of his praja, his people, then he should be ousted because he's become vidharmi. He has no right to stay. So we can understand the concept of duty was so higher in our Indian ancient Indian jurisprudence that they believed that fundamental rights or rights need not to be enforced; they will automatically be enforced. So type of automation. We are in the era of automation. Everything's are on clicks. Automatically things are happening. So fundamental duty was a tool of automation to enforce and ensure fundamental right of a person. King had a duty, and it was not that king was far more very important than others. He was important because he has greater duties, therefore greater rights. But then it does not mean he was above dharma. You will recall that you have Supreme Court also. The emblem says, "Yato dharmas yato jaya." जहां धर्म है वहीं जय है. Our Supreme Court emblem says. Why dharma? Because जहां duty है वहीं विजय है. Duty means धर्म. कैसा धर्म? धर्म ऑफ राजा, धर्म ऑफ प्रजा, धर्म ऑफ टीचर, शिक्षक का धर्म पढ़ाना, अध्यापक का, विद्यार्थी का धर्म पढ़ना. पति धर्म, पत्नी धर्म. पति का धर्म है घर की पूरी ध्यान देखभाल करना, पत्नी की देखभाल करना, बच्चों की देखभाल करना, भविष्य की चिंता करना. पत्नी धर्म, पत्नी का धर्म है कुछ पति के प्रति, बच्चों के प्रति. पुत्र धर्म, पुत्री धर्म, सभी धर्म. So our concept is entirely different from West. And why this is? Why this is? The reason is simple. Reason is that in Western society, Western jurisprudence, religion dominated. But religion dominated for their own sake, for their own purposes, for their own interest, not for the interest of all people. Bahujan Hitai was never a concept there. Hitai of king people, that was the only concept. Hitai of church. And that's why they always thought that church is superior. And the church people are more superior. They are representative of God. Therefore, whatever they say, good or bad, you have not to filter it. Whatever they say, they are beyond question. And because king became representative of that, he was a representative of church, so he was beyond question. And therefore, the doctrine came, king can do no wrong. India, it was not so. A king can also do wrong, and if a king does, he has to face consequences. He has to respect people. And in India, we had gone to many extent. Take example of Lord Rama. That when Mata Sita came in, even then, certain objections, arbitrary objections were made. Lord Rama did not react. ऐसा नहीं कहा जा उसको फांसी पे चढ़ा दो. See, our jurisprudence, Lord Rama had respected his feeling. It was completely wrong. If you criticize, I would say that was not probably a right decision. But he has respected it. And Mata Sita has also respected the decision of Lord Rama. This is how we respect democracy. What is there in Western philosophy? अगर आपने सोच भी लिया कि राजा की तो मृत्यु हो गई, if you have dreamt of, that king died, it amounted to treason. फांसी पे चढ़ा देते थे. There was a law for it. अगर आप सपना भी देख लिया आपने, अब गलती से बता दे दोस्त को, अरे भाई देखो कल सपने में मैंने देख लिया कि राजा की मृत्यु हो गई, बात चली गई, आपको फांसी पे चढ़ा देते थे। See the difference between Indian wisdom and the Western wisdom. So the ruling regime was suppressive in nature, oppressive in nature, and they always thought about themselves and their own family members. They misinterpreted the rules given by church, and church has protected their misdeeds to gain power. They have not served the people. Indeed, they have discriminated. They said that we are far more important being than others, unlike India, where said that we all are equal, we all are santan of God, male or female. What did Western thought? What is Western thought? Western thought says female is a product of sin. And that's why for a longer period, females were not given equal right. Why? Because it was thought that rights are only for male and man. And you will remember Declaration of Man. You will remember French declaration immediate. First declaration was Declaration on Man. Why? Because they thought the men are superior. Up to 1945, when the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was under preparation, that time the declaration did not use the word human rights. They used the word rights of man. It was one Indian, Hansa Mehta, who was present in the preparation of the draft for UDHR. She opposed it. That what is this declaration of men? And why not women? And ultimately it changed to human rights. So the whole point of discussion is that Western philosophy, fundamental right became important because rights were suppressed there continuously. Scientists were hanged. Someone who said, अरे भाई पृथ्वी नहीं घूमती, पृथ्वी घूमती है, सूरज नहीं घूमता, पृथ्वी अपनी जगह, पृथ्वी घूमती रहती है, सूरज तो अपनी जगह पर है, चलो उसको फांसी पे चढ़ा दो. So I'm not suggesting that everything in India was good, but fundamentally we were far more advanced. We have respected others, even if there was dissent. Great dissents were respected. You cannot think of dissent against a king in Western philosophy. So what I am trying to make this house understand is that there is a sharp difference between Western philosophy of duty and Indian philosophy of duty. And in Western philosophy of duty, duty was only concentrated and focused on general citizens. Duties were means focused only on slaves, only on female, only on vulnerable class. And powerful, right from church, right from king, right from the ministers of the king, right from feudal lords, they had rights, RIGHT rights. They had rights against these poor people, these weaker people. They do not have fundamental duty. They do not. They did not have they had duties. Feudal lords have duties towards king, but they had rights against poor people. King has duty towards maybe church, but king has all rights, arbitrary rights against all persons. So that's why when thinker started about a civilized society in Britain, they thought about rights because they were suppressed, they were oppressed by people in power. In our country, this was not the situation. In our country, there are illustrations where suppose a person wants to marry the daughter of a person. You will remember old stories. Daughter of a person, he has to take permission of his father, and if the permission of father is not there, then he could not marry. You will remember the story of Bhishma Pitama, why he took all oath. There are hundreds of those stories that we had respected others and we had duties towards poor people, weaker people, our praja. But that was not the case with Western philosophy, and therefore the idea of rights crop up. And the thinkers, they came up with maybe Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau, and others. They said, oh, we surrender some of our rights, but we do not surrender all rights. And we surrender it for a particular purpose, for good governance, not for bad governance. So they say if they are bad governance, throw them out. So they developed this rights concept, right, right to equality. All are equal. They had to declare it. And they were initially, they did not agree. And that's why this rights discourse came in, and the first recognition of such rights were maybe 1791, when first 10 amendments were there. 10 amendments, Bill of Rights. There also, you will be surprised to know that equality was not a right there. It was recognized maybe after 80 years. So, to rights concept, so let us understand this difference between duty jurisprudence and rights jurisprudence. That rights jurisprudence developed in UK as a reaction to suppression and oppression. But fundamental duty in Indian jurisprudence was part of that. We had a duty towards our neighbor, duty towards old people, even we do not know him, duty towards every children, duty towards others, ladies. So we follow duty jurisprudence, which was lost in last maybe 1,000 years of separation of India. So when fundamental duty was incorporated, it may have any purpose. But as I told that there is a silver lining, fundamental duty has become part of constitutional jurisprudence. And as Professor Upendra Bakshi says, that we have talked more about fundamental right, let us develop fundamental duty citizens. So this is the general background. With that, I want to begin with. I have changed the slide, and I hope the slide is visible to you.
Yes, sir.
Now, fundamental right discussion is important because from here lies the connection between directive principles and fundamental duties. Now, rights, what are rights? Rights are freedoms essential to individual and common people, others also, not just individual. Freedoms are available to maybe group also. So, and for the common good, they are guaranteed under the constitution, and that is how fundamental rights are different from other rights. Because other rights are not guaranteed under the constitution. They are either not recognized or at least not guaranteed. Part third are guaranteed. Right to principle is not guaranteed. Right to property is not guaranteed. They are mentioned. They may be enforced, but not guaranteed. Many human rights, which are in human right document, they are not guaranteed under the constitution in all cases. Then fundamental rights, why they are fundamental? Because of two reasons. One is that they are part of fundamental law of the land. What is the fundamental law? Our constitution. That's why they are fundamental right. Why are they fundamental right? Because they are part of our constitution. But then there is another point, that is they are enforced by the high courts and the Supreme Court, because our constitution does recognize other rights, right to property also, but that does not become fundamental right. Even if that is recognized in the fundamental law of the land, it is not recognized as a fundamental right. Why? Because the Supreme Court and High Court cannot enforce it under 32 and 226. So we should be very clear on fundamental rights. So instead of telling that they are basic, they are maybe they are essential, they are natural, first thing that we should say is that they are fundamental in the nature, because they are recognized in Constitution Part 3rd, and they are they has to be enforced by High Courts and Supreme Courts. Then they are fundamental right, but we should be careful. They are not absolute. Sometimes there is a confusion that these rights, because they are recognized in the Constitution, Part 3rd of the Constitution, therefore they are absolute. And sometimes when the protest takes place, sometimes some NGOs, sometimes some activists, they project as if these rights are absolute. Rights are not absolute. They are not fundamental in the sense that they are absolute. No, not at all. They are not absolute. It is said they are inviolable. No, they are not inviolable. They can be, but of course they are. They have to be. They have to follow the constitutional principles. Maybe restrictions, reasonable restrictions. So they are not something which is uncontrolled. So if you do something, I do something that leads to disorder or lawlessness, certainly the rights will be taken care of. Maybe sometime, even if not disorder or lawlessness, but for the purpose of public policy, rights can be controlled, rights can be regulated, and they are subject to constitutional amendment. Now the issue is settled. In the constitution bench judgments, this issue was debated like anything, and it was again thought their natural right, their absolute right. But then with the passage of time, we are aware that it is made very clear that no, they are very important, significant right, but they are not something beyond amendment. It is not something that you cannot amend it. Now, when the Constituent Assembly was discussing rights, there was a Fundamental Right Committee. Fundamental Right Committee was headed by Sardar Patel. And in the initial draft, he proposed fundamental right in two parts. One part was enforceable, other part was non-enforceable. Enforceable part means those parts which are very essential and therefore they can be enforced by the courts. Non-enforceable part contains those rights which the state cannot immediately give. Why the state cannot give? Why? I have changed the slide. I have changed the slide. I hope it is visible. Right to principle to state policy. Why the state cannot enforce it immediately? Because of finances involved. Huge finances involved. Because of customary practices, जिसको कि तुरंत बदलना आसान नहीं है, जो कि बहुत लंबे समय से चली आ रही है, 1000 साल से हो रही है. कस्टमरी प्रैक्टिस को धीरे धीरे ठीक करना है. बिकॉज दे आर आइडियल्स, बहुत ही ऊंचे आइडियल है, उसको भी 2-4 दिन में, 10 दिन में, 10 साल में नहीं पा सकते आप, इन्फोर्स नहीं करा सकते आप आइडियल्स को. ठीक है, मैं जो है अपने घर का एग्जांपल देता हूँ कभी कभी कि बच्चों को कई बार कहा है कि जो बाहर से आते हैं उनको नमस्ते करना है, लेकिन कई बार वो भूल जाते हैं. कभी कभी उनको थोड़ा सा शर्म भी आती है क्योंकि उनके दोस्त नमस्ते नहीं करते. आइडियल्स को you cannot always use force. You have to use with the help of your persuasion, making them understand by practices. आप भी अगर रेस्पेक्ट करते हैं बड़ों की, आने के बाद उनको रेस्पेक्ट करते हैं, पैर छूते हैं, तो बच्चे भी पैर छूते हैं. आप नहीं छूते, बच्चे पैर नहीं छुएंगे. आइडियल्स इनको आप इन्फोर्स नहीं करा सकते हैं. इसलिए डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल्स या ऐसे प्रिंसिपल्स के अंदर सोचा गया सरदार पटेल की कमेटी में, which are essential but they cannot be enforced. They changed into directive principles policy later on. क्योंकि ये सोचा गया कि नहीं, इनको फंडामेंटल राइट में डालेंगे तो कंफ्यूजन हो जाएगा. इन्फोर्सेबल फंडामेंटल राइट, अनइन्फोर्सेबल फंडामेंटल राइट ऐसा डाल देंगे तो कंफ्यूजन हो जाएगा, इसलिए दोनों को अलग अलग करना. Now these directive principles can be further subdivided. They contain moral things. लाइक आप 39F अगर पढ़ेंगे तो 39F में कहा गया है कि ड्यूटी है स्टेट की. क्या ड्यूटी है? कि बच्चों को मोरल जो उनकी डिप्रेवेशन है उससे बचाए. जिस ड्यूटी ऑफ द 39F में साफ साफ कहा गया है. Indeed, morality finds recognition in fundamental right also. Article 19. Moral finds recognition here. Fundamental directive principles. बच्चों को मोरल डिप्रिवेशन से बचाना है हमें, ये ड्यूटी है. आजकल अक्सर हम लोग कहते हैं कि अरे अब ये मोरल पॉलिसिंग नहीं होनी चाहिए. यू कैन नॉट इम्पोज. द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन हैज सेड, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन सेज दैट बच्चों को डिप्रिवेशन से बचाना हमारी ड्यूटी. केवल ये परिवार की ड्यूटी नहीं है. इट इज नॉट ओनली द ड्यूटी ऑफ द फैमिली. इट इज नॉट द मोरल ड्यूटी ऑफ ओनली पेरेंट्स. It is the moral duty of the state also, which is recognized under directive principles, which may not be enforced in the constitution, in the courts, but which are fundamental in the governance. एंड दैट्स वाई आप देखते हैं कि पोर्नोग्राफी के अगेंस्ट पे बहुत स्ट्रॉन्ग लॉ बना हुआ है, बनने की बात भी आ रही है। ड्रग एडिक्ट्स बच्चे हो सकते हैं, हो जाते हैं, इसलिए लॉज बने हैं, स्ट्रॉन्ग लॉज बन रहे हैं, बने हैं। सो मोरल, सर्टेन थिंग्स which are moral in nature in the directive principles. There are certain things which are regulated, which are part of governance of the court, like free legal aid. बाद में हम लोगों ने ऐड किया है 59A, which has become part of fundamental right because they have been enforced, they have been interpreted with the fundamental right to Article 21. Upliftment, financial upliftment, social upliftment, it is provided in directive principles. So there are certain provisions that deal with upliftment. कैसे uplift करेंगे आप लोगों को? And it is a duty. Upliftment के लिए तरीका पता है क्या है? For example, फीमेल के लिए आप क्या करेंगे? उनको प्रसूति अवकाश देंगे। तो प्रोटेक्शन regime as well upliftment. रिसेंटली हम लोगों ने देखा होगा कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में जो विच इज प्रोवाइडेड कि जो प्रेग्नेंट वीमेन है उनके लिए हम स्पेशल व्यवस्था करें। अभी यूजीसी का भी एक नोटिफिकेशन हम लोगों ने देखा है कि अब पीएचडी स्कॉलर्स को भी व्यवस्था वो कर रहा है, वो दे रहा है। स्टेट हैज अ ड्यूटी। पॉइंट इज दैट are we ready to enforce it at our home? Can I give, if I ask my wife that let us give that pregnancy leave to some of my domestic servants, she won't agree, and many of us won't agree. Directive principles are principles for the state, but they are indeed a part of direction for us also. Of course, the state has greater resources, that's why they can do, but that does not mean we have not to do. That's why the concept of fundamental duty came in. Then directive principles do contain religious things also, which have some religious inclination. Take example of Article 44. There is a direction. Indeed, in the Constituent Assembly, it was argued that Article 44 type things should be made a part of fundamental right. But then they thought that it is little difficult because you cannot enforce it immediately. Revolution आप religious aspect में अचानक revolution नहीं कर सकते. Political revolution is possible, but probably religious revolution is not possible. Because religion हमारे अंदर तक बसा हुआ है. We will revolt. We will die for religion. तो इसलिए they take a very good decision कि yes, we will wait for it. Religion. There are other things which is associated with our own feelings, our own belief. हमारी है, हमारे लिए पवित्र है. There is a provision in directive principles for state policy कि उनकी रक्षा करेंगे. Then vulnerable groups. There are other provisions in the directive principles that is for the upliftment of vulnerable group, especially for all. Directive principles for all. But then for vulnerable group, जो लेबर सेक्टर से जुड़े हुए हैं, मैनेजमेंट में उनको हम अपलिफ्टमेंट करने के लिए मैनेजमेंट का साथ देंगे, बाद में अमेंड करके हम लोग डाला उसमें से कुछ प्रोविजंस. वल्नरेबल ग्रुप शेड्यूल कास्ट है, शेड्यूल ट्राइब है, और भी कमजोर वर्ग के लोग हैं, उनके लिए ध्यान रखना स्टेट का काम है. जो ओल्ड एज पे लोग हैं, वृद्ध हैं, सिक हैं, बीमार हैं, उनके लिए हमने प्रोविजन डाला. कंस्टिट्यूएंट असेंबली ने उनके बारे में सोचा, वल्नरेबल ग्रुप के बारे में. But they knew that they cannot be a part of fundamental right. क्यों? Because of two reasons. That एक एजेड आदमी जाके कहेगा कि I have a right against my son, ये वेस्टर्न फिलॉसफी है. हमारी फिलॉसफी तो ऑटोमेटिक ड्यूटी करने की है. हम अपने ही बुजुर्ग का ध्यान नहीं रखते, पड़ोसी बुजुर्ग का भी ध्यान रखते हैं. ये हमारी तो कह सकते हैं परंपरा का पार्ट है, पार्ट ऑफ आवर कल्चर है. वी रेस्पेक्ट ओल्ड एज पीपुल ऑफ आवर नेबर, आवर स्टेइंग इन आवर neighboring house, टेक केयर ऑफ देम. दिस इज आवर पार्ट ऑफ कल्चर। तो ये सोचा गया कि शायद इसको लिखने की जरूरत नहीं है फंडामेंटल राइट के रूप में, कि जो ओल्ड एज पीपल है उनको एक राइट होगा। ये राइट लिखने की जरूरत नहीं है कि बच्चों को अपने माँ पिता से राइट होगा मेंटेनेंस पाने का। बाद में हम लोगों ने सीआरपीसी में प्रोवाइड किया ही है उसको, पर कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन लिखने की जरूरत नहीं थी। Why? Because we believed in duty jurisprudence. Of course, we were not able to secure that. So, vulnerable group के upliftment के लिए provisions. Later on, we find that these rights have been included in the Article 21 through various cases. Whenever discussion goes on for the rights of old age people, rights of pregnant people, you will remember Narges Mirza case. Right to get married and get a child. These Similarly, this pregnancy leave, they have been now read under Article 21. So we found that when the constitution was under discussion, they had certain constraints. They thought of that these rights are certainly very significant, but they cannot be enforced because of various reasons. And these 4 or 5 reasons can be found, not just because of finance, but because of other reasons also. Because either they're not required, or they are not that time so significant, or they are very close to our maybe religion or customary practices, and it is not possible to do. So that's why there were provisions that directive principles were not made enforceable. But when the time started passing, and when the time started passing, the state has also started doing its work for the purpose of directive principles of the state policy. We have under fundamental right provisions for we are directed. Article 14 says equality for equals and inequality among unequals. That's why state has started enforcing inequality among unequals to make them equals and bring them to equal footing. They have started giving some reservation in 1950s. So the first attempt was in Madras. When some reservation was given on the basis of vulnerable group. But then this reservation was challenged, and the case came in Champakam Durai Rajan. In Champakam Durai Rajan, the state argued that we have directive principles, they are part of our policy, and therefore we have made certain provisions for people who are weaker. There are provisions for the purpose of religion also, provisions for the purpose of scheduled caste, scheduled tribes also. And state argued that we have to enforce directive principles, and in order to enforce directive principles, we have to give them some reservations, some weightage has to be given. But the court did not agree in Champakam Durai Rajan. It said that you are arguing directive principles of the state policy, but directive principles of the state policy cannot be enforced, and therefore they are lower than the fundamental right. And right to equality cannot be violated because this right is far more important than directive principles of the state policy. So Champakam Durai Rajan has made fundamental right far more important than directive principles of the state policies. And initially it looked very strong argument कि हाँ सही बात तो है, आप उसको enforce नहीं कर सकते, तब तो fundamental right ही सबसे ज़्यादा important है. Champakam Durai Rajan. But then first amendment came in, and provisions were made in the constitution itself that for the purpose of scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, special provisions, protective discrimination, affirmative discrimination can be made. So Champakam Dorai Rajan, the idea of Champakam Dorai Rajan was lightly was little bit diluted. Meanwhile, there were some disputes regarding fundamental rights. What is the nature of fundamental right? Champakam Dorai Rajan said that fundamental rights are very, very significant, at least in comparison to directive principles to a state policy. There were other cases like Kerala, Indre Kerala bill case. There are also some disputes were there. Then Delhi laws case. But I'm skipping those points for a far more stronger and concrete discussion. But before that, in the case of Goloknath, fundamental right has got the most important recognition and probably a faulty recognition. Most important but faulty recognition. That fundamental rights are beyond amendment. You cannot amend it. It is absolute in nature. It is not just more important than directive principles, it is more important than anything else. Even it is beyond the power of the amendment of the Constitution. I think it was a faulty reasoning. Later on, amendment was brought in, 24th Amendment, 25th Amendment, and ultimately in 1973, the position was restored that fundamental rights are certainly significant, but they are not beyond amendment. And fundamental rights can be amended, but it should not be something like that. Uh, Fundamental rights are amended in such a fashion that it violates directive principles of, basic structure of the Constitution. So it was held that no provision of the Constitution can be amended in some way that it violates basic structure, basic feature of the Constitution. And therefore, fundamental rights can also be amended, but it cannot injure the basic feature of the Constitution. So that way, we should not have any confusion that fundamental rights cannot be amended. It can be amended, it has been amended also. And it can be amended, still it can be amended unless it violates basic feature of the Constitution. Why this discussion is significant? Because the state, the government was very much encouraged by partial recognition that fundamental rights can be amended. Can be amended. I'm finding some noise there. I think no, I'm not disturbed. If the noise is general in nature, there is no need to. There is no problem. But it can be stopped. If it's a general type of thing, then there is no issues. I am trying to make the whole discussion. I'm trying to make the whole discussion more jurisprudential than the case-based, this case, that case, which is already available in the books, and at PhD level you can understand it. Thank you. Thank you. So what we find that the government was little encouraged that okay, at least fundamental rights can be amended. Then the government, then the parliament has further made certain attempts. One of the attempt was that for the purpose of directive principles of the state policy, some of the fundamental rights can be amended, can be compromised, not just amended. So if you want to enforce the active principles of the state policy like 39B and C, which is a type of principles which contains principles of social justice, then you can make laws and those laws cannot be challenged on the ground of violation of Article 14 and Article 19. And this amendment was indeed not touched. The Supreme Court has not said anything on this amendment. So the position became that directive principles became more superior in context of 14 and 19 when 39B and C is being enforced. So there was little change. Little change in the sense that our constitution said that directive principles cannot be enforced, fundamental right can be enforced. Now, on that way, fundamental right has a little bit enforceable feature because enforceability it is the superior in nature. The situation changed that directive principles of the state policies, if a law is enforced for the purpose of 39B and C, and it compromises Article 14 and 19, then such compromise cannot be considered as significant and cannot be declared unconstitutional. And the court court almost upheld it because the court did not say anything on that. So the parliament has further encouraged, and it has changed 39B and C to all directive principles, extended it. And it made an amendment that if any law is made for the purpose of any of the directive principles, not just 39B and C, that they cannot be challenged on the ground of 14 and 19. So that way, the situation was further tilted in favor of directive principles. Means, now directive principles of the state policy, for the purpose of this, you are making a law for any provision of directive principle, right from maybe 37, 38 onward, 51. So Article 14 and 19 cannot come in. So this was a complete change, a tilt in favor of directive principles of the state policy. But then again, it was challenged. When it was challenged, in Minerva Mill case, the government argued, the state argued that we have to enforce directive principles. And how to do if we want to enforce directive principles, why should fundamental right come in? Because directive principles are for everybody. It is not just for individual. For everyone. It is for upliftment of everyone. So we have to make laws. And the second argument was that fundamental rights are not pious. Keshwanand Bharati already decided that fundamental rights are not very pious. And therefore, they said that directive principles are more important for government than the fundamental right. But the court said no. Fundamental right is more important than directive principle. So directive principle is more important than fundamental right. This is not a very useful discussion. Both are part of the constitution. Both have been equally discussed. So, of course, fundamental rights are enforceable, therefore they have some significance. Of course, 39B and C can be enforced, and for this purpose, 19 and 14 can be compromised. But you cannot change this balance. This is a type of balancing activity, but you cannot change this balance in favor of one directive principle of the state policy or to the fundamental right. And there has to be a balance which has to be maintained between fundamental right and directive principles of the state policy. And this balance has to be maintained with harmonious construction of fundamental right with directive principle. You cannot just suppress fundamental right for the purpose of directive principle of the state policy. And therefore, the incorporation, that for the purpose of directive principle of the state policy, 19 and 14 can be compromised, violates basic feature of the constitution, and therefore the original position is restored that you can make a law which enforces 39B and C, but then you cannot say the same thing about all directive principles because you are disturbing the balance. And this balancing between fundamental right and directive principle is a part of basic feature of the constitution. And you cannot make an amendment. What to talk about enactment? You cannot make an amendment to suggest that directive principle is more important than fundamental right. You have to make a balance. So this balancing activity through harmonious construction is a part of basic feature of the constitution. This was decided in 1918 Minerva Mill case. So before I move on, we find that directive principle of the state policy and fundamental rights have three status. And D.D. Basu, one of the leading experts, D.D. Basu says there are three types of situation of directive principle and fundamental right. One is that fundamental rights are more important because fundamental rights are enforceable. Directive principles are not enforceable in a court of law. So that's why fundamental rights are more important. Second position, directive principle of 39B and C is more important in comparison to 14 and 19 because 14 and 19 cannot come in way of enforcement of 39B and C. So that's why directive principle of 39B and C is more important than fundamental right of 14 and 19. This is the second position. And third position is Minerva Mill position, that neither fundamental right nor directive principle of the state policy, none of them are more important. They are equally important and both have to be harmoniously construed, and the balancing between them is a part of basic feature of the constitution. So that is how fundamental right and directive principle of the state policy can be read into under three circumstances. Now, when the situation when we started when the we further passed on, the time further passed on, the state found, sorry, the court found that state is not only making amendments in the constitution for the purpose of benefit of their own people, but for their own political purposes. And state is little reluctant to enforce the active principles of the state policy, and it is taking decision on political grounds, political basis, and they are enjoying powers. They are not concerned for maybe common people. There were certain incidents also. We are aware of 1973. Prior to 1973, fundamental right and others, see 368 was amended, 4 and 5 was incorporated to make the parliament more powerful, most powerful. This was one amendment. Then 39th amendment came in. This was another illustration of how state or state politics has started usurping power. Then the incident of appointment of judges, Justice Rewar became Chief Justice in 1970s itself. Then emergency to 1970s has seen four important developments. First was that the parliament started to usurp power and try to make itself very, very strong, like UK parliament, amending 368 4 and 5, incorporating 368 4 and 5. That the parliament started interfering in the judiciary like anything, and Justice Rewar was made Chief Justice because he was pro-government. That 39th amendment was brought in. This is third point. 39th amendment was brought in for the purpose of executive, not just for parliament, not for parliament, for the purpose of executive, an election of Indira Gandhi was declared constitutional. It was legitimized, which was later on declared bad. 39th Amendment. And fourth was emergency. I think these were the four factors which compelled the Supreme Court to change its attitude and approach. Supreme Court was also little bit uh, uh, means worried because of its own approach, because the Supreme Court did not came up strongly when Justice Ray was made Chief Justice, when emergency was imposed. So with that, we find that the Supreme Court has a change in approach, and it started reading directive principles of state policy in the fundamental rights. So one of the initial cases is uh, where it was declared that free legal aid is a fundamental right. Free legal aid is a fundamental right. So free legal aid is not just a type of gift. You cannot say, the state cannot say हमारे पास fund नहीं है, free legal aid कहाँ से देंगे हम? You cannot say like that. They started reading that in under Article 21 because they found that the people in power are more concerned for them, not concerned for poor people. They are concerned for their boss, political bosses. They are engaged in pleasing business. They are engaged in doing those things which are more important for them to win next election, to win some post. So they have started taking a bigger leap, Supreme Court, and they have declared Hussain Khatun case that it is fundamental duty, fundamental right under Article 21 to get free legal aid. Equal pay for equal work. This is a part of Article 39. And it was declared as a part of fundamental right under Article 14 as well as Article 21. State argued that equal pay for equal work हम नहीं दे सकते, male female को बराबर नहीं हम दे सकते. Court said nothing doing. That is your responsibility. You cannot keep on arguing financial difficulty for maybe 30 years. For last 30 years you have done it, okay. Now you do it. Then provisions regarding women. We are aware of Nargis Mirza case. Then principle of equality, which is present in Article 14, but then further elaborately made available in directive principles. Some of them were read into fundamental right. Arbitrariness doctrine was developed. It was held in certain cases that you cannot be arbitrary, you cannot decide something arbitrarily. Why? Because it violates fundamental right. So some origin of this can be found in directive principles also. Then labor jurisprudence was developed. You will remember that rights in management, rights of laborers, equal good conditions for work, they are part of directive principles. But they were recognized, in certain cases, they were recognized under fundamental rights. That no, labor rights are not for the state to decide because there is no finances. You have to make provisions for that. So some of the rights which were just statutory rights, like equal pay for equal work, provision for making provision for their PF, provision for health for workers, they were made fundamental right. So take example of right to health cases. We all know that health finds recognition under directive principles of state policy. But then in many cases, beginning from Parmanand Katara case to Mazdoor Kisan Samiti case. In Mazdoor Kisan Samiti case, a worker was working has got injured in a train accident, and he did not get medical. He could not be hospitalized in various hospitals. Ultimately, he was hospitalized in a private hospital. So the Supreme Court directed the right to health is a fundamental right, and you have to compensate him, even if he was hospitalized in the private sector. Workers' right has been recognized because there were provisions under laws which said that if the worker is under employment, when he stays in employment, he can get health benefit, but after employment he cannot get benefit. So the Supreme Court asked that the person who was working in a certain employment take asbestos factories, take those factories which are dangerous for the health of a person. A person has worked for 15 years or maybe 10 years. He got his liver damaged. He got a heart ailment for 10 years. Now he's now he cannot work because he become weaker. But why he became weaker? Why he became sick? Because he worked in a particular factory. Now he's not working, he's retired. Who will give them benefit of health? Of course, it is provided in the directive principle, but the court held that is a fundamental right and directed the state to do it. So that way we found that labor jurisprudence, rights of women, rights of pregnant women, rights of children also, they were this free legal aid jurisprudence, they were developed, they were read into fundamental right. Then there were certain positions that had some link with religion. Take example of Article 44. In 90s, Sarla Mudgal case, and then many other cases, the court has said that time has come that they should be enforced because they violate Article 14. They violate justice, equity, and good conscience. Sarla Mudgal has relied on justice, equity, and good conscience principle and directed that the right to principles be enforced. Unfortunately, in the latter decisions, the court said that no, we cannot direct because this is the part of directive principles for state policy. But we are aware that every year there is one judgment or two judgment that says that this needs to be followed because it is almost 70 years. And if the government is not going to do, then certainly one day the Supreme Court will say that it is a part of now Article 21. One constitutional bench judgment can any day. Fortunately, things are moving in positive direction. Instead, triple talaq has been declared unconstitutional. There are certain petitions pending. And why these petitions are pending? Because the government or the parliament has not done it for 70 years. And the political parties are not gathering together for enforcement of this directive principle. So that way, we are indeed compelling our Supreme Court to declare these things as a fundamental right, part of fundamental right. That makes the Supreme Court far more active, far more maybe go into the jurisdiction of Parliament, go into jurisdiction of executive. We cannot later on complain that the Supreme Court is interfering. Similarly, you can see international law provisions. Article 51, we are aware of. Now, before that, let me discuss the provisions that deals with environment. That is there in directive principles of the state policy. That is there in fundamental duty also. So environmental jurisprudence was developed. Why? Because it was found that the government is reluctant, not taking care of. Either because these people who are engaged in factories and companies, they are very, very strong people. Some of them are member of parliament also. Some became ministers also. They are violating environment, and therefore the Supreme Court started taking note of environmental jurisprudence, which is indeed a part of a directive principle of the state policy. Later became part of fundamental duty. Was not at all a part of fundamental right expressly. It is expressly provided under directive principle, expressly provided under fundamental duty, but not at all expressly provided under fundamental right. But then the environmental jurisprudence was developed. Why? Because the Supreme Court found that the government is little reluctant, not taking care of. Take example of CNG cases of Delhi in 1990s and 2000. Thanks to MC Mehta, who has developed this jurisprudence. But the government was not that time not ready to change. Why? Because in Delhi, the bus business was with the politicians. They did not want it to change. The Supreme Court has to direct. Yes, it has to be CNG. And that time, various hue and cry was made. This is encroachment in the jurisdiction of the state. This is encroachment in executive jurisdiction. This is encroachment in policy making. Supreme Court cannot do it. The intellectuals made various crying. But now we find after 20 years, we are working on CNG, and CNG, which started working in Delhi, now is working in many places. So we found that such type of interference was good, but it was invited interference. Directive principle is made so that the government should do themselves, but because the government is not doing, the Supreme Court has to interfere. Lastly, yes, I was discussing international law also. The Supreme Court has discussed international law. Article 51 talks about international law, which is the active principle. And Supreme Court has discussed international law in so many cases. Take example of Nalsa case. Lastly, I will discuss in 2-3 minutes maybe fundamental duty. So fundamental duty, there are 11 fundamental duties. I will discuss the duties like we have to respect our noble ideals of national struggle. We have to uphold and protect sovereignty, unity, and integrity of the country. Integrity finds mention in the preamble also.
Yes.
Sovereignty, unity, and integrity is a part of Article 19 also under restriction. So we cannot speak something which goes against sovereignty and integrity and unity of the country. People are speaking Azad Kashmir or Azad Nagaland. You cannot indeed speak, you violate fundamental duty. And to defend the country and render national service, and we have seen that during COVID, it was required, and probably section Article 51 AD was required, and doctors and police personals and media personals have rendered their national services. And we also tried to do our best. Then to promote harmony is not only the duty of the state, it is our duty also. And in the age of WhatsApp, this has become very important, especially my friends, because on WhatsApp, so many rumors are coming, so many wrong messages are coming. So we have to promote harmony. It is our responsibility. Various Hindu Muslim messages are coming, and false messages are coming. That we should not be part of that. We should not forward those messages. If we forward it and it is found false, we violate fundamental duty of to promote harmony and spirit of common brotherhood. So let us verify those messages, because law people are relied on by society like anything, and therefore WhatsApp messages, Facebook messages, let us not like those messages. Let us not forward those messages unless we are confirmed. एक हिंदू ने एक मुसलमान को मार दिया, एक मुसलमान ने ये बात कह दी. We are fed up of these messages. Let us not become a part of that political agenda. So this is our fundamental duty. Then to value and preserve rich heritage of our composite culture. So we have to value our rich heritage, like our ancient wisdom. New education policy has come up with that. We have to value and preserve our rich heritage. Then to protect and improve environment that I have already discussed. But lastly, I will discuss to develop scientific temper, humanism, and the spirit of inquiry and reform, which is the last important thing I'm going to discuss. There are many cases which have enforced, which have read fundamental duty in fundamental right also. I'm not referring to those cases, but if you are interested, maybe you can see one of the cases, maybe Society for Unaided Private School of Rajasthan versus Union of India 2012. It has read fundamental duty, fundamental right, and the active principle. Whether take example of one of the example is very good example is Hindustan Zinc Limited with Rajasthan Electricity 2015. It has read Article 48A, 51AG with Article 21. There are many cases, but I'm skipping those cases. I will just discuss this last point that Article 19 talks about freedom of speech and expression, that we have freedom. But Article 51A, this clause, to develop scientific temper gives us duty to speak, to develop scientific temper. There is a freedom to speak and expression, so we can remain silent also. But then there is a duty to develop scientific temper. Somebody is speaking nonsense, somebody is speaking something which has no rational background. So let us speak and suggest that that is wrong, but be polite. So develop scientific temper. Humanism. That spirit of inquiry. Let us develop a spirit of inquiry. Some of us are teachers, some of us are PhD scholars. They will become teacher. We have to develop among our students a spirit of inquiry. Encourage them. That yes, please ask more and more questions. And we should also ask questions from the government, from those in the power. They may be religious leaders, they may be media leaders, they may be commercial leaders. And finally, reform. Don't just say that, don't just ask questions like press reporters. Please do something for reform. That is a part of our fundamental duty. And let me tell you that these reforms, this spirit of inquiry is a part of Article 21. Spirit of to develop scientific temper is part of Article 21. So with that, I close this part of discussion. I think I have exaggerated for 3 minutes. The questions and comments and other things are welcome. I have deliberately skipped the case part because I wanted to concentrate more on jurisprudential aspect, philosophical aspect at PhD level, and case aspect is available on online. Thank you very much. If there are questions, if there are comments, those are welcome, please. Okay. So should I sign out now?
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Okay.